Hello, we are in Bucharest during the UNSICAR conference with Mr. Nick de Marshall, General Director of BIPAR, and Mr. Paul CARTY, Chairman of BIPAR's EU Standing Committee, in order to discuss and debate about the latest trends in the mediation market and more about the IDD role in the insurance industry. Welcome to our show. How would you characterize the role of BIPAR at the European level? How do you cooperate with the national associations?
Every rule in a national legislation these days in the financial services sector, so also in the insurance intermediation sector, is for, let's say, 90% based or inspired by international or European principles, standards, or regulations or directives. So, of course, a sector like ours, heavily regulated, must be in Brussels and must work together with its national associations on an almost daily basis in order to make sure that all the politicians and all the regulators that are dealing with our sector are aware of our needs, our concerns, and also what we need as a sector to be able to continue and innovate, to continue and do business in the interest of consumers. So that is, I believe, the basic reason why BIPAR exists, why we are in Europe, and why also every national association is active and together with us in order to make sure that as one group and one voice, we make sure that our views are heard.
We are now 6 months since the IDD is enforced. In Romania we started a little bit later because the national legislation was still in progress, but we can say that we are 6 months since this directive is enforced. What are the main aspects that you have noticed in implementing this directive, both at the European level, but also from your discussions with associations in different countries?
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mihaela. You are a little late in implementing, but you're not alone. Other member countries have been late, and some are even later again. But for those who have implemented, you must remember the nature of the directive, Mihaela. It is a minimum harmonization. And so what we see is that some countries choose to add to the directive. And that is not always welcome. They can sometimes over-elaborate. So our position is we would wish that each member state would stay as closely to the directive as is possible. We think that's important because that will allow, over time, greater convergence between the member states.
We are quite far from the review of the IDD, although this will be still possible in the next years. What are the points that you feel that should be amended from your point of view of BIPAR, or maybe from your members' point of view?
We actually don't believe there should be any amendment to the IDD. We think that there should be a pause, there should be a halt to further changes or additions to the IDD, because change takes time and change costs a lot of money. The IDD is a pretty reasonable, balanced piece of legislation. So I think it should be allowed to sit, to be implemented properly, and over time to have a gradual review. So we don't actually wish to see any changes right now at all. There have been too many changes, there's been too much regulation now over the recent years. We need to adapt and we need to implement what we have currently in place, not further changes.
This is
Do you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, this is an optimistic and realistic point of view, but still we have made the parliamentary election for the EU, and the new council will be in place. And we know that there are a number of insurance-related pieces of legislation that will be reviewed or discussed in the next years. From your point of view, what should be the priorities, or what should be the focus?
Well, in any event, reviews are embedded within the directives.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean change. So we know that Solvency II is on the agenda. IDD will be reviewed. So we will participate in the debate to find out what the evaluation is, but we are only implementing now. So we shouldn't do this too soon. You have to have a little bit of a reference point also to evaluate something and to see where it must go. The IDD is an activity-based set of rules, so we believe it is future-proof, and it should now be left to the market to bring it in the culture, not only to adopt the rules, but also making sure that it is becoming part of our reality, and therefore we need more time.
Because we are discussing these days about Brexit and nobody really knows how things will evolve, what can you tell us about the importance of the single market? Why is this so important?
The single market is very important for consumers. It's very important for consumers because it allows the markets to develop. It allows new entrants, new ideas. It creates greater competition within all of our markets. And I think that's ultimately to the consumer's benefit. Because in some markets you can have too high a level of concentration amongst some well-established players in the market. And that's not always to consumer advantage. There might not be sufficient competitive forces. So I think the single market was a wonderful development that we Europeans achieved over the last 2 decades. And I think we need to build on that success, quite frankly.
Coming back for this single market, one of the most controversial issues regarding this is the regulation convergence. Many countries do not want to apply the same regulation coming from Brussels. What is your comment upon this issue?
Yeah, we regret always the gold plating because it doesn't work in any event. But on the other hand, we should not exaggerate that either, because I believe that many countries now recognize that the IDD is forming a very good framework, and it's probably just to deal with national specificities sometimes that some markets do gold plate. But if there is something to be done, then I believe it is gradually trying to destroy these barriers, because that is what it is creating. We believe after so many years of debate about how a sector should be regulated, I think in the debate where everybody was involved, all parties, all countries and so on, I believe it is necessary to give a little bit of more stability and perhaps making sure that the minimum IDD is considered as a maximum IDD. So if over time these barriers can be, let's say, destroyed or reduced, that would be, I believe, a very good thing for Europe and for innovation and for further development in the sector.
Can I perhaps add to that? I completely agree with, as you would expect from what Nick has said, Mihaela, but I think this convergence is occurring anyway.
Yeah.
The fact that I happen to be Irish, Nick is Belgium, and we're here in Romania discussing the same thing. And our supervisors are meeting together in Frankfurt, in EIOPA. So I believe there will be significant convergence in future years. I think that's a natural progression, and I think that's to everybody's advantage, because it means we will have consistent standards. So the same standards if you're in Romania or in Germany or in Ireland, and I think that will strengthen the single market and help public confidence. So I think that's very good.
As a follow-up question to what you have said, you are one of the major stakeholders in discussions in Brussels, in Frankfurt. How do you cooperate with your other, let's say, counter stakeholders like Insurance Europe, Consumer Protection Organization, Better Finance, and so on?
As I said at the beginning, I believe this whole process is a constant dialogue with all the parties involved. So depending upon the dossier, you are sitting in any event with one or other party around the table, and this is also facilitated by the European institutions and also encouraged, because they want to have the views and the opinions of everybody before taking decisions. So this is almost a natural, let's say, dialogue that is ongoing in one way or another. Sometimes a little bit more specific, sometimes a little bit more specialized, but that is what is Brussels about, is to make sure that it is a big debate, and it's not only at European or national level, it's also at international level these days.
We talk to everybody as a state. Very important.
The dialogue is the key.
Absolutely, it's open and continuous.
You both are professionals with extreme vast experience in insurance. What advice would you give to the countries that entered the EU in the 2000 year in order to push up the insurance industry?
Well, I think they are doing pretty well. They're progressing in the right direction. It's not perfect, but nothing in life is. So I have a very positive attitude towards this. My advice, and it's not for me to give advice, but you asked a question, so I'll answer this. I think they need to adapt to the rules with a very positive attitude and to make a sincere effort to make sure the standards that we wish to see in every market are as true here in Romania as they are in Germany or in Britain, which will hopefully remain, or in France. So I think it's important for consumers here that your local regulators are very good, very reasoned in imposing the standards that have been introduced. That's from Solvency II, Nick, to IDD, to all the other matters. Now avoid gold plating, but we believe we have a sufficient number of regulations. They're good regulations. If they are properly implemented, good standards will follow. And I think growth in the market will be the result, because you'll have enhanced consumer confidence and we'll have more trade. I think that's what's important.
And I believe that today the conference here is a very good illustration of a young market with young people, professionals, open-minded, talking with the regulator about serious issues in a very transparent way. So that is absolutely a fantastic experience for us and for many of our colleagues to be here. So it's great. There were 240 people in the room. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon in Romania, in Bucharest.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Miguel.